Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Tracy Pilgrim George, and it brings me great pleasure to welcome you all to our Authors Series celebrating National Library Week 2024. And we're here at the Derek Walcott Library, named after our esteemed Nobel Laureate for Literature. And it's truly a privilege to be in this space, a space where we have Derek Walcott's books surrounding us. I mean, it is just such an honor. Today we have the pleasure of hosting two remarkable authors. We have Mac Donald Dixon and Chadia Mathurin, whose works have inspired and captivated all of us. We extend a special welcome this morning to Dr. Marjorie Jameson Charles, the principal of the South Louis Community College, as well as the vice principal, Merle O'Geese, Dr. Merle O'Geese, other managers and faculty of the South Louis Community College, of course, our students, specially invited guests, and our online viewers. Bonjour tout le monde. So this morning we anticipate a really engaging and captivating discussion after our authors present. But first, give me the opportunity to introduce them. Chadia Mathurin is a St. Lucian author and entrepreneur currently residing in Accra, Ghana, as the founder and CEO of Wakote, what is it? Wakote. She is dedicated to bridging Africa and the Caribbean with global development through technology, commerce, and storytelling. Her published works include Being a Virgin Isn't Enough, Challenging Misconceptions About Purity, and Dreamer, offering pragmatic guidance for pursuing purpose, with insightful books like Letters to My Brother and Letters to My Sister. She confronts societal norms and with empathy and humor. Mathurin's writing inspires readers to navigate life's challenges and fulfill their dreams with resilience and clarity. Good morning, welcome. Mac Donald Dixon. We know and love this rebel. Mac Donald Dixon is a Caribbean writer with a rich history in theater, nurtured under the guidance of Roderick Walcott at the St. Lucian Arts Guild. His literary contributions span poetry, plays, novels, and short stories, featured in esteemed publications like Link, Caribbean Quarterly, and Caribbean Writers. Dixon's latest novel, A Scream in the Shadows, resonates with young adult readers, delving into crime and justice against a rural Caribbean backdrop. Available at, of course, the South Louis Community College, his works include Season of Mist and Misbegotten. They celebrate resilience and confront societal realities with poignant storytelling. So, without further ado, we begin the first part of this morning's presentation with reading with author Mac Donald Dixon, who will be reading an excerpt from chapter 2 of his unpublished book entitled Hold Back the Night. Mr. Dixon, welcome.
Thank you very much. Hold Back the Night is about, since this I've written another novel, but it's my novel before the last. It deals with the story of a man watching his wife die of cancer, and is clueless and hopeless, can't do anything about it. The novel is a love story that it goes much deeper than an ordinary love story. There are two people, poles apart, one from a capital city that is going through phases towards modernity, whereas the other is from a small town in the south of the country that decides that it remains stuck in the 19th century. And the two are poles apart. One is a single child from a Protestant home. The other one is from a large family, Roman Catholic home. Two persons, poles apart, come together. Without more description, I will move straight into the reading since I have a time limit on the reading. Hold Back the Night, Chapter 2. How can I forget the first time we met, which is different from the first time I saw her? Nothing is commonplace once this woman enters your life. With a little patience, I will explain this. I was walking down south, a hot day in July 1972. After checking the post office box downtown for bank mail, strolling leisurely back to work close to noon, nothing eventful was happening around me on Commercial Street. The air thick and humid, blackbirds making a racket high up in the palm trees in a small park next to the church. Only me seemed to notice them. Looking up, the birds were perched in a straight line on the telephone wire running directly below a large palmist palm whose branches provided shade. This group was not as noisy as the blackbirds I knew in Castries hanging around the old Anglican cemetery, but their droppings were raining down on the pavement with the consistency of an unseasonal squall, which my hair was not prepared to accommodate. Continuing up street, I passed in front of the old police station. The sergeant was not on the tall stool at the front desk where he normally sits and may have ducked out for lunch. I crossed the street. As I reached the last block before approaching the main thoroughfare to avoid an old two-story wooden building hanging over the corner on its last legs, teetering like a drunk on top the sidewalk, ready to tumble into the road at the command of a slight breeze, it always gave me the creeps. The building was old and had seen better times, yet still its imposing Creole gables dominated that part of town. The carpenter's artistry still evident in the intricate lace fretwork that embroidered its eaves. The paint had long since peeled away from the wood, and whatever color left came from the colonies of fungi that lived in the grain of its local boards. Out of boredom, I tossed my keys in the air and caught them, conscious that with few people on the street, nobody would think it odd. Coming from the capital city, where there's always hustle and bustle at any time of day, had me wondering why business houses close for lunch on the stroke of 12 in this little town, turning it into a morgue. Why all this inactivity in this part of the island, I thought. But my mind was too relaxed to wait for answers. A slim figure rounded the corner, walking briskly towards me. Her curly afro and broad, air-splitting smile caught my attention. "Hi," shamefaced, I grinned. "Hi," she replied, slowing down her pace a little, more from good manners than anything else. "I didn't quite catch your name," I said, staring into a pair of almond brown eyes, the kind I seldom see and had not seen in a very long time. "I never said," she replied, still smiling. "But you can say, 'I'm Michael.'" I stretched out my hand to shake hers. She pouted her lips, sucked her teeth, and muttered, "Just so." Shrugging her shoulders, and without as much as giving me a second look, moved on and hurried down street. I watched her go and pondered, "That's a real feisty one." That chance meeting was filed away for future reference. August came and went. Friends and acquaintances returned from their annual holidays and were busy organizing home parties on weekends to reorient with the real world of work and relieve the boredom that came from not being at the office for the month. As a habit, several of us from the capital who worked in the South left the town on weekends for Castries, returning early on Monday morning. This allowed me an opportunity to let off steam after a week trapped in a pressure cooker job like bank officer. Up to September, I was not in a proper frame of mind, having broken up with my girlfriend of 5 years earlier in the year, who for some inexplicable reason wanted to relocate to New York. We had gone there the year before on vacation, and somehow she never forgot the bargains on street corners and the closing down sales, allowing the Big Apple to firmly implant itself in her head. The night before she left, I told her I could not commit to a long-range relationship, and she cried, hiccuping at an abnormal pace that got me vexed and caused me to lose my cool. I hate tearful partings, I said, and walked away. She wrote me 4 letters, which I filed unopened in my desk drawer at work. The 4th letter came 3 months after the 3rd. Judging from the fancy envelope and raised lettering RSVP, I suspect it was a wedding invitation, and I felt relieved. At least she would not take her own life in the large city because of me like she threatened the last time we spoke. A bit conceited, as young minds generally are, I did hope she would come back, and I would welcome her, for as vain as I was, I cared for her deeply. My mother complained that I was fast becoming an endangered species, moody, taciturn at best, still pining the loss of my girlfriend. I hardly left my room when at home, and my head was always buried in a book. One morning, while trying to pinch an akra hot from the pot, Mama felt bold enough to tell me it was time to let go. She's gone, she said. I don't think she's coming back. Move on. You'll soon find out there are other fishes in the sea. Driving back to Vieux Fort that Sunday afternoon, her words kept clanging like a school bell in my head. A week after, there was a party at my next-door neighbor, an old friend from Castries. He was happily married with a 3-year-old daughter, a chubby deer. It was supposed to be a cook-up, and on the menu was green figs and the catch of the day. I made a monetary contribution. No way you can get me to stain my clothes peeling green figs or stoking fire under a boiling pot to come out there smelling like a smoked ham. From my room upstairs, I heard the music jamming. I planned to sleep and then go to the party when I get up later. But with the racket already going on, I didn't bother to try. I showered, dressed casually, went out the door to my friend's place, which had become an extension of the batch. In the yard, I walked past 2 or 3 coal pots on the ledge outside the kitchen window, each with a large aluminum pan boiling at full steam, the aroma tickling my taste buds. The fish and figs were on fire, and one of the girls was fanning with the enthusiasm of a fanatic. Inside the living room was dark, but I could make out a few shapes on the floor grinding to Roberta Flack's new hit, Killing Me Softly with His Song. I walked in through the kitchen, where I greeted Joyce, my neighbor, Fred's wife. What a miracle, she shouted as I appeared. How come you so early? Joyce loved a good lady and prepared for a back and forth. How you expect me to stay away from this nice music and inviting chow? I sniggered, testing the waist with a little jiggle. Joyce was supervising things. There were about 4 other girls in the kitchen wrapping paper napkins around plastic knives and forks. Although it was a small gathering, there was a lot to do. The arduous task of peeling green bananas was complete. No fish left to clean and season, only fires to fan. Drinks on a table in a corner in the living room. I could see the table and bottles from where I was, with a little help from the street lamp. Fred was on the floor enjoying himself, as Joyce put it, entertaining his guests. There were about 8 couples in the small living room, plus a group of ladies huddled in the corner discussing whatever I didn't want to hear or know about. When the number ended, someone turned on the lights, and there she was, my chance meeting on Commercial Street, mysterious lady. I did not have a name, but would soon find out she was Fred's dancing partner. Tongue-tied, rooted in my steps, oogling, I wanted to greet Fred in my good mannerly tradition, but his dancing partner had me mute. I could swear I got hit by a lightning bolt. Fred led her out into the kitchen, where she was helping Joyce organize things. I thought closer to church, further from God. Didn't expect to see you until we start serving the food. I paid little attention to Fred's jibes. My eyes were on his dancing partner. I talking to you, Mikey, man. I heard him, but my tongue couldn't move. I see, you know Madge. No need for introductions. I shook my head, indicating no, still mute. Madge, meet my neighbor, my good friend Mikey. He rattled off as if from a prepared text. She bowed. I concealed my interest and did not stick out my hand, remembering our last awkward encounter. Tell her what you do, Mikey, the two of you in competition. She works at Barker's. I'm at Royal, the new bank on Clark Street. My tongue unstuck from its palate. Oh, I see. She turned up her lip and looked at me square in the face as if to say, bring it on. I behave stupid sometimes when ideas flash across my mind. I read too much into things, and I felt a bit awkward. Fred seemed lightheaded and moved off to trouble his wife. She was having a dusty time keeping him at bay. He wanted to dance, but she did not. I am working. Find something to do and stop bothering me. Joyce turned to me and mumbled, once he take 2 drinks, that's how he gets on. The next song, Tie a Yellow Ribbon Round the Old Oak Tree, had Fred dragging Madge back on the floor. She didn't seem to mind. Leave Madge alone, Joyce shouted. Don't get her tired before she finishes her work. People start coming already. Fred dropped Madge's arm and went straight into the living room to the table with the drinks. They start coming long before I bathe. I am here. You expecting more after me? I smiled, stealing a quick glance at Madge. Wow, she is good looking by any standard. Make yourself useful, Joyce ordered. Help Madge cut paper napkins in 4. Madge grinned. I felt the ice melting. I thawed a little too. The tenseness between us started to wear off. Madge folded, I cut. There was not much to say. Heads down, smothered by the job. Couldn't help looking at her hands. Her fingernails were well manicured, covered in pink cutex. There was a cheap ring with a glass stone made to look like a solitaire diamond on the forefinger of her left hand. I itched to tease her about it, but held back. Too soon, I said to myself. You'll get your chance. The small living room in Fred's house was full within the hour. I could see sweat pouring down cheeks after each number when they passed through the kitchen to go into the yard for fresh air. A good soul took pity on the dancers and moved the hi-fi outside. Skies were clear. We could see the stars. And an exodus followed the music. The two of you can go and enjoy yourselves. There isn't much left to do until it's time to share food. Joyce shooed Madge and me out of her kitchen. May I have the honor of this dance? I turned to Madge, exaggerating my actions and speech to look funny. Neil Diamond's song Sun Blue was playing. I don't like dancing half numbers. The song is almost finished. Madge smiled. Another church-out. I envisaged briefly, yet something told me she was not giving me the brush off. Nevertheless, since we started this race on the wrong foot, I was extra careful to avoid a huff. Fine, I said. Keep me in mind for your next number. Don't press too hard. I'm famous for disappointing. I left her leaning against the kitchen door and went out into the yard to meet some new friends. The next tune was by Roberta Flack. First time ever I saw your face. How apt. I thought and glanced over the heads between me and the kitchen door. Madge had gone back inside and was busy ripping cellophane wrappers from some packets. Panting, breathless, I stepped forward. May I? My hand stretched out, sweating profusely around the column, my stomach rolling. Maybe. She looked at me coyly. I could see a broad smile. You sure you want to dance this tune with me? Joyce pretended not to hear, but killed herself, stifling a laugh. Her back was turned, but I could see her cheeks move. More than want, I stuttered, especially when I think of the words. Madge chuckled. You're a poet or what? I wouldn't say so, but I write. She took my hand and whisked me into the middle of a small crowd, light as a feather, easy to follow as we weaved in and out the 3 or 4 couples grinding their souls away, giving me ideas about wanting to feel her a little closer to my chest. She was enjoying the dance. A full moon in the east was slowly climbing the sky, and I could feel her eyes close as we moved together in rhythm with the melody. You can dance, she murmured quietly. The music was getting under my skin. A damn good-looking woman in my arms, that was my cue to slow the pace and draw her in. What you think you're doing? She glared, her hand firmly planted on my chest. Dancing? I looked down, trying to get her to continue, but she stiffened like a dead body upright on the floor while the world continued to spin around us. Up to this day, I swear it was an accident when my hands brushed against her breasts, and she flew into a rage, pushed me, and walked back to the kitchen. Embarrassed, my pride shattered, thinking that everyone saw. I couldn't take my eyes off the ground. I wrapped my little tail between my legs and edged away in search of Fred. There were not many individuals around I knew well enough to relate my troubles. So my one consolation was a straight Scotch. Many tongues would be wagging the next day, each with some version of my demise. In the kitchen, I got a glimpse of Madge making herself busy, placing plastic knives and forks already wrapped together in paper plates, whilst chatting with Joyce, who was laughing her head off and making comments in between. Fred was in conversation with some guys. One of them from Castries worked at customs. I drew him aside and told him I was going back to the batch to let Joyce know.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mac Donald Dixon, excerpt from chapter 2 of his unpublished book, Hold Back the Night. Now, those of you who are online would not be able to see the smiles of the audience here at the Derek Walcott Library. I mean, we could feel, we could visualize this. And I think that when it comes to romance and love stories, it is something that always touches us. There's also a Marge in the room that I saw grinning throughout. Not sure if she was remembering her own love story, but she certainly looked like she enjoyed this reading. So we begin with some questions from the audience. I mean, I have my own questions to ask because I'm very, very curious as to, how it is that one can use, because the words that are used, some of the vocabulary is very specific to St. Lucia. So I'm wondering, how does one sell to the international market? I mean, it is very Caribbean, it is very much us. But I don't want to start off with my question, I want to start off with the questions from the audience. What do you think? What are your questions? How was the reading for you? And of course, the questions are not specific to the excerpt. It could be generally in terms of writing, his writing. One of the things that came to mind while listening is he's got to make an audible. There's nothing like listening to the author himself read. Yes, we have a question. Yes, sir. Come up. You need to use the mic. Yes.
I believe that the audience can agree that it was a very personal reading, that you felt like you were with the characters as people themselves, like you were in the room. And as you had mentioned, his latest novel, Scream in the Shadows, is also which I have read, which is also very personal when you see the perspectives. So a writing question, both for this novel and your latest one, is how you not only portray like an intimate human feeling there, but how you get it into writing. Because you can have a conversation with a person and indicate your feelings with people, but then to translate that to writing and still make it feel like the audience is in the book or the reader is within the scene, how would you give advice to achieve that?
First of all, you begin by reading. Reading helps you to write. Now, it may sound ridiculous, it may sound roundabout. I can still remember as a youngster, now I grew up like most colonial kids, being fed the classics. I would have read Oliver Twist, I would have read David Copperfield, and whatever. But there was one thing that always struck me was the Dickens' ability to talk the language of the small man on the street. And when I got older, in fact, I forced my mother's hand to become a member of the library so I can go upstairs because I was too young to go upstairs. I was about 12, 11 or 12. So my mother became a member of the library and I would be able to go upstairs and borrow books. And I started reading novelists like Francois, Faulkner, and I was very indiscreet, you know. I read the big-time novelists and understood them. I read Lady Chatterley's Lover when I was 12, and I understood the language of Mellors. Well, I mean, we were matured before our time. But one of the first things to have ever struck me was when I discovered 25 poems at the back of a shelf in the college library. And I picked it up and I started reading this thing. And I was shocked because every metaphor, every image in it, I knew. I knew Castries when I read A City's Death by Fire. When I read This Island is Heaven Away from the Dust-Blown Blood of Cities, I said, but this is how I feel. I was reading Walcott's 25 poems. And from that day, I knew I would become a writer. And that day, I began to read even more. I discovered In the Castle of My Skin by Lamin. I discovered The Hills Were Joyful Together by Roger Mays. And I began to focus on Caribbean writers. And as a result of this, I began to hear my people more. Then you move from reading to hearing. Then you hear the people. And then when you begin to hear, then you begin to write. Then you begin to reproduce what you hear. Now I'll answer your question one time because it fits into the thing.
Perfectly.
How can you read a Jamaican work and understand it? Or a Bajan, or a Trinidadian, or a Guyanese writer, and you can't understand this individual? The same thing in reverse. When they read our work, they see us. Okay? So there's a universality about writing, you know?
And I like that. I like that last line there. When they read us, they understand us.
Yes.
And so that is powerful. Yes, Miss French? Yes, you do.
Thank you for that reading, Mac Donald.
Thank you.
This is written in the first person, which is a very intimate type of writing. So how do you go about deciding if you're going to do a first person point of view or a third person point of view? Because someone else could have written this in the third person 100%, but you chose to do first person. And so did the story tell you? Because sometimes when I'm writing, the story tells me what it wants, or did you impose upon it that you wanted it to be first person? How did that work for you?
I don't think that I study these things when I'm writing. What happens to me is that the idea comes, though if there's research attached to it, I then immediately go into research and put my notes down. And then I begin to flesh out the plot line, the story, and thing. And then when I have everything lined up, I will know from the first sentence that starts the book what person I'm going to write in. Now, there's a very thin red line between the first and the third, as you know. Because you can have a first person writing with 2 points of view, where one is in the third person, describing the person who is going to tell the story. Because the person, when you write in the first person, you have restrictions, and that the narrator cannot describe himself. So you as a writer must find techniques to do it. Now, I am not normally a first-person writer. If you read Season of Mist, Misbegotten, in fact, my first 3 novels are written in the third person. The first major work that I've ever written in the first person, well, some of my poems are in the first person, but the first major work remains A Scream in the Shadows. And then there's this, and then there's the other novel which I just completed, the Green Hills Are Calling. I just finished it. That's a story that deals with the transition from sugarcane to bananas and set in the Roseau and Cul-de-sac valleys. It's in the first person. It's being told by an 80-year-old woman who comes back to England to claim a piece of her family land for her to put her retirement home, and find that they steal the land during LRTP. So this is a story I heard so often when I was in the bank, so I had to tell it. So it's a composite of many personalities. Okay.
How has your background in theater, you think, influenced your writing?
Very much, because I think I'm one that don't believe in gifts and things. I think that you acquire skills through life. There's this superstition about you're born with gifts and so on. I don't believe that. I think that certain instincts are more acute than others, and if you can train those instincts, you can tap in on them. I think that I was born with the instinct of observation. I observe things, and I'm also a very good listener, believe it or not. I listen to conversations, and as a result of listening, I hear. And it's very easy to motivate all 5 senses, and once you can motivate all 5 senses, you then mobilize them, and you send them into battle, okay? Yeah.
Any other questions from our audience members?
I really enjoyed the way in which you described the blackbirds on the, and it's so vivid, and it reminded me.
You're from Vieux-Fort?
No, it used to happen in Castries, remember?
Yeah, they're down the cemetery. That's
Right,
why
there you go, there you go. And it's so vivid when you described it, and that came from memory. Or
Yeah.
is that something, right?
That's from memory. That's from memory. Even in Vieux-Fort, I still
Yeah,
remember,
so it's-
outside the church there, these blackbirds, you had to be put in your hand on your head, or else they give you an extra shampoo.
Yes, yes, yes. So is that the same thing for a lot of what you write, or does it come from, do you make it up, or does it come from a lot of your, I know you spoke about experiences, but that kind of vivid explanation is I would like to know how that came to be.
No writer really makes up anything. A lot of it comes from little incidents in your life and thing, and then you amplify it on the page. I mean, except that you're writing real hard science fiction or something where you really have to create the atmosphere and the thing. Most of your description, for instance, of sunrise and sunset, you must have seen that. So, description of people, you remember people walk. And there may be somebody with a specific type of walk that attracted your attention, and then you put it into your character. Sometimes a character is a composite of several people you know, and you've got it into one voice, one character. Yeah. Writing is not as difficult as people imagine. And I know there are a lot of students here that look at writing your papers for your studies as a chore. But I mean, it's a very simple, everyday thing, you know. It's an extension of your speech.
So what has been the most difficult thing
For me?
for you in terms of writing? What has been your greatest
Well,
challenge in writing?
for 20 years, I was trying to write Hold Back the Night. I thought of writing it as a non-fiction piece, and I couldn't do it. So I had to fictionalize the characters, change around the families, change around the addresses, reduce my wife's family in half, cut it down, and which was more manageable than the 14. And I think for my side of the novel, it was very easy to work. I know myself, I knew my mother, and so on. But when it came to writing the other side, I couldn't do it. So I decided, eventually one day, a friend of mine told me, but you should really write that, you know. Contemporary of mine too, who knew us very well. Said, you really? I said, okay, I'll do it as fiction. And I had just finished writing A Scream in the Shadows, and which was ideal because Scream in the Shadows has some passages where this guy brutally murdered his stepchild and so on. And I was in the mood. I did. I wrote it. I wrote it very quickly, actually. Yeah, because I knew the story. Yeah.
Yes, I'm just going to pass. We just have a question here from the audience. Just if you can pass the mic over to her, please.
Very, very interesting. One of the things that really got to me was, I'm from the South, I'm from Vieux-Fort.
I know.
And I know the whole story.
And you know the family.
And I know the family, and I also
Yeah.
know your mother because everybody used to give me things. So I was able to follow the story in my mind's eye. And I say, God, this is so fantastic. Because I guess I know the story, I was able to just walk it with him. And I kept saying, wow, this is beautiful. That's just, I didn't have a question, just a comment. Yeah.
But I would like to see somebody who did not hear the story now to counter you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think there's a counter. I think that those of us who don't know the story were able to appreciate the story, understand the story, and feel the story, and be part of the story. And for me, I think one of the things that also resonated was the choice of songs. You know, Killing Me Softly.
But that's a period song.
Very period, but you still had to be selective on the because there's so many songs.
Those are the songs that were played.
Yes, those are the songs that were playing. But these are also timeless songs.
Yeah.
You know, so that was fantastic. We have a question from one of our students.
I wanted to comment on your writing
Thank you.
because, well, I wanted to say it's a really revolutionary thing that you are doing. I started.
You sure?
I know.
Do you read? Do you read a lot?
Yes, I read a lot of West
So
Indian.
you're making me sound unique. There are a lot of us, you know,
I
that doing
know.
that. Huh? You know that?
I know.
Okay.
But from the West Indian lit I've read, romance hasn't really been a common genre. From a lot of the books that I've read.
Neither is crime.
Yes, neither is crime. But you get a lot of tragedy, you get a lot of sad stories, and a lot of the books are always from an older person retelling things that have happened in their lives. Yeah, that's usually what you get, but you don't get a lot of romance. And I find it really comforting that we have romance writers writing romance stories that people from the Caribbean can relate to. And what you were saying about when you found the 25 poems and you felt seen, I read West Indian Lit mostly. I think I only read West Indian Lit at the moment because I do feel seen when I read it. The things that I read and the descriptions that I see, I have those experiences, like I've lived that life, I've heard the birds, I've seen the flowers in the book, I've met those personalities before, and it kind of makes you think, like when you read books, colonial books, these people also feel like this, but we never felt like that. It feels more like you're looking into a painting rather than you have been in the painting yourself.
Very good.
Yes. So I do feel like it's a really good thing that you're doing, putting forward a lot of genres that we don't necessarily see in Caribbean literature, like crime, romance, etc. What I wanted to ask was, you said the novel you just finished writing is from the perspective of an 80-year-old woman, and I wanted to ask you, how do you make the personality authentic? Because you are not an 80-year-old woman. And for a writer to write a character, for a writer to write a person, a life that they have not experienced is not a necessarily easy thing, because a lot of writers put their own experiences into their characters. A lot of the characters in their stories are patchworks from people they have met. So I wanted to know how you managed to make a character that you haven't been real, feel like a real person.
Well, you haven't read the novel yet, so you wouldn't know if I was successful. First of all, what is your name?
Faith.
Faith? I must congratulate you for your very mature analysis, you know. I don't often hear this coming from young people. And I think that you're on the right path, all right? At least people like me can go and sleep now and know that the future is in good hands, you know? Yes, now let me answer your question. I actually patterned her after my mother, who died at 96. And I lived long enough with my mother to know the little mannerisms and the little idiosyncrasies that 80-year-old and 80-year-old above women have. But what makes it more complex is that the 80-year-old woman flashes back to the young woman. So there's actually dialogue with her when she's going to St. Joseph's Convent as a young woman. She won a scholarship from the Valley, and she went to convent, you know. But then she preferred to speak in the vernacular, but there were times when she broke back. And this is the difficult part in the novel, that novel, is to keep the two and to keep them sincere. That is where I have to work on. I'm still not satisfied with it, you know. I've sent it to Jane to read, actually. But she hasn't got time for it yet.
You have to point me to exactly where it is on my phone.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So it's still in its infancy. The jury is still out on that one. But don't worry, I accept criticisms and I work on them. Okay? Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to just take this opportunity to welcome Mrs. Jane King Hippolyte and her husband, Kendall Hippolyte.
Yeah, Ken, man, you missed the reading, man.
It was fantastic.
But I was glad.
I don't think we would mind another reading, you know.
No.
Very much appreciated that. Another question from the audience? Yes, you do. For our online viewers.
Thank you. Mac D said something to answer your question that I wanted to echo. He said he gave it to Jane to read. That's what we do as writers. When you write, particularly for me, I'm not a man of any age, but I'm always concerned about my male characters. And I look for my male friends to read it for me and to tell me if what I have written down is something that a man of that particular age would do. So you need the feedback from other people as well. So that's how sometimes you would try to address an experience that you are not familiar with. I have written about, I had a character who was a professional woman in a wheelchair. I've never been in a wheelchair. I went out and I found someone, had them look at it for me and tell me if what I had captured was authentic. So that's one of the ways you address that.
All right, we'd like to take this opportunity once again to thank you so so much for your reading and, of course, for giving us some insights into your writing. And I would like to reiterate, you need to do an audible. Your voice, your background in theater makes it phenomenal. And I think that being read to, we all like to be read to, and we all like to listen to the author because he knows or she knows exactly the feeling that she wants the audience to experience.
As a PR person, you'll make the arrangements so we can get the finance. Okay.
All right, we move on to part 2 of this morning's author series. Conversation with author Chadia Mathurin. She will be presenting on the writing process and the business of publishing. Good morning, Ms. Mathurin. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, I think it would be remiss of me not to highlight the fact that she is a past student from the Division of Art, Science, and General Studies of the South Louis Community College many moons ago. Thank you so much for
Bonjour
presenting.
tout le
Welcome.
monde. Bonjour, bonjour. Okay, I think I see my former principal here, Miss Jane King Hippolyte. I think she was the principal at the time I attended DAGS. The dean, yeah, she was the dean at the time of DAGS. And Miss Jacobs, of course, my former comms teacher. A very tough act to follow, for I am an accidental author, not as prolific as Mr. Dixon. And it's very ironic that I'm speaking on the business of publishing. And I met Mr. Dixon in January at the Nobel laureate lecture, and he offered me the privilege of probably publishing Hold Back the Night. So it was really nice hearing it read out loud. So my name is Chadia Mathurin. I am from the People's Republic of Labrie, currently resident in Accra, Ghana. I own a publishing house called Wakote Books, and we publish exclusively Caribbean and African authors. In 2017, we launched the publishing house. And just before I go to 2017, allow me to go back to, I believe, 2014. Remember I said I'm an accidental writer. I was a very sharp-tongued 20-year-old wreaking havoc on Facebook. And so I decided I needed better outlets. I needed to use my words for bigger, better things, other than quarreling on Facebook and cutting people down. I mean, so that's what I was up to. And I think I had taken a very big block from life at the time. And I said, you know what, I need to use my words better. So I started off a blog on WordPress. And wrote for a few months. And one morning, I wrote a blog post called Being a Virgin Isn't Enough. And the feedback from the blog post almost ruined the battery on my then Samsung Galaxy S3, because whatever I had written had resonated with so many young people across the globe. So that was 2012. In 2014, I published a book of the same title, Being a Virgin Isn't Enough, self-published. At that time, Create Space was what we used on Amazon. So those of you who are interested in doing your own publishing, Amazon has a platform. You just pop your stuff up and they publish for you. I mean, I can go into more details. Published this one, hit #1 on the Amazon bestseller list, and the rest is history. In 2017, I reneged on the pact that I had made with myself, and again, a few of my friends and I, my then Trinidadian friends, because I attended the UE St. Augustine, so many of my friends at the time were Trinis. I reneged on the pact that I made with myself about using my words wisely on social media. And again, we were wreaking havoc on Facebook. It was a group of us. But it was serious activism. We were dealing with a lot of issues, religious issues, social issues. At the time, the murder rate, as it concerns domestic violence, men killing women in Trinidad, it was just off the charts. So our commentary pretty much spanned everything. And I was like, you know what? I think we're prolific enough to write about this, not just on Facebook, but we can put it in a book. And that's how we launched Wakote Books with the Letters Project, a group of young Caribbean authors pretty much addressing social, relational, economic, religious issues. And we were very keen on using our local palace. So I loved hearing Mr. Dixon's use of chot-chot. Just the use of the local palace. It's something that I encourage. And Miss Pilgrim George, she asked a very interesting question earlier. She asked, how do they understand what we write? And I remember one of our writers, Leal Aline Bain, former hallmate of mine and one of the authors on the latest project, she in particular had used a lot of Trini Palace in her work. And someone commented, oh, you should explain what this and this means. And my response was, when we read Ebonics, we take it upon ourselves. So I don't know how many of you read Ebonics or you know what Ebonics is. We read Ebonics, we read books like Our Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, and we've taken the initiative to go and find out what certain things mean. And I expect for those people who are given the privilege to peer into our lives to do the same. One of the things that I tell my authors all the time is that we do not ponder what our stories are rich enough, they are valuable, and so we can use our own palace. And in the same way we make the effort to peer into the lives of others, they can do the same for us. So this is my story in terms of how I got into the world of publishing, how I got into the world of writing. Like I said, I am an accidental author. And so we have young people here. I actually know two of the students here, Sham and Faith. Some people may want to venture into writing and they think it's like such a monumental task. And I love what Mr. Dixon said, that writing is not at all difficult. It is an extension of your speech. It's an extension of your thought life. And some people think, this is such a difficult space to get into, but it really isn't. With technology and some of the things at our disposal, writing has been made accessible to many, right? And I definitely want to encourage more St. Lucian authors. We have fantastic storytellers. I mean, our society, our culture is one of storytelling. We're fantastic. If I start to think about stories from my grandmothers, both of my grandmothers, I mean, it's crazy. We're fantastic storytellers. And so I just want to encourage people that there are outlets for you to be able to pursue writing. And perhaps one of the things that you should probably look into, beyond just getting another writer within our 238 square mile space to write, to look at your writing, you can put the eyes of the globe on your writing. Like I did through a WordPress blog. I have thousands of friends from Kenya that I've never met just from a blog. So being able to use these avenues to be able to begin marketing your work for when you're ready to publish, because some people, they're actually shocked at how few sales they make when they publish because they haven't taken the time to do the groundwork. But, this groundwork is important to, being able to make this profitable, because yes, you're writing probably is a hobby, but you actually want to get some type of reward for your writing. And sometimes you need that monetary reward to be able to continue the work that you're doing. So you want to be able to set the groundwork, to do the marketing, to connect with other authors, to connect with non-authors, to connect with people who are just fans of your work. And then, you take it from there. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff that's accessible to you. You can just go to kdp.amazon.com. It takes nothing to set up your account. It takes nothing to upload a book. They will give you the ISBN for free. Everything is free. You just click. As long as the stuff is ready, you click and you publish. And it's free. But what you do with it after it's published is really important as well. So this is some feedback, and then now I'm going to try to follow Mr. Dixon's very tough act and read a couple of my letters to my brother and letters to my sister. So, like I said, the Letters Project, we basically provided a platform for young Caribbean authors to address social, relational, economic, political, and religious issues in a bold and transparent manner with a tinge of humor, an embrace of our native palace, and a wealth of wisdom. So I touch on a lot of things in both installments of the letters, and yeah, I'm just going to read probably about 3. I don't want to exhaust my time. So I'm going to read a letter from the chapter I Am Woman. Dear woman, we've heard it so often that we've believed it. We heard it so often that we forced generations of womanhood to lose themselves, to erect barriers that purpose did not. We've heard it so often that we've limited womanhood to the scope of becoming a man's wife and someone's mother. Wife and mother. These are some of the beautiful experiences that come with womanhood. They are expressions of womanhood. They are exclusive to the makeup of womanhood, but they are not the chief purpose of womanhood. The chief purpose of womanhood is to reflect God in a way that manhood cannot. The existence of womanhood alongside manhood allows God to be shown in a wholeness that ceased to exist in the one human, the very moment that Adam's rib was removed to form another entity. So, they lied when they told you that the only way that you can be of any value on this earth is by becoming a man's wife or someone's mother. They plain out lied. They lied when they told you that your purpose is found in a man. They lied when they told you that it is God's design for you to simply become what a man desires because you were created for him. You already are woman. You already are woman. Before you are a man's daughter, a man's wife, someone's sister, someone's mother, you are God's child. He knew you even before you were formed in your mother's womb, and formed you, he did. He placed gifts, talents, and desires within you, and they were placed in you for his glory. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you ought not to partake in certain sports or certain jobs because you are a woman. Don't ever let anyone place upon you limitations or differences that are not divine. Play that sport, take that crazy, crazy job. Utilize all the gifts and talents that the Lord has placed within you. Do it because you're a woman. Do it because it's an opportunity for you to reflect the might, power, grace, mercy, and glory of the one who created you. A sister rooting for you. Then I'll read another letter. And I think I know a couple of people personally who have passed on from breast cancer. And I guess I'm addressing it to pretty much any woman who has dealt with it. Beautiful sister, they cut off a few of the things which made the woman that you are, or at least what we thought made you woman. Yet, somehow, you're more woman than you've ever been. The disease weakened you, yet somehow you discovered within a wellspring of strength. Its aggression shook you, yet you still stand. It robbed you of your hair, yet you still radiate with beauty. I see you, clothed in grace and humility. They took away your womb and damned you to a perpetuity of barrenness, yet you're pregnant with hope and unsurpassed strength. They cut off your breast, yet you still feed and nourish a multitude. You nourish with wisdom, strength, hope, and love. I am left to reason that the measure of your womanhood was never found in the ampleness of your breast or in the presence of your womb, but in the weight of your soul. So when you look into the mirror, look with eyes that see into the soul, and all you will see is pure, undiluted woman, because that's what you are. So when you look into the mirror, look with eyes that see. Look with eyes that see the fullness of the woman that you are. The woman, the reflector of God, who could not disappear, even in the face of sickness. Signed, Learning of Beauty. This one is for my brothers. Dear Muzzle, it is absolutely nuts that in the 21st century that I must continue to seek permission, to beg for a woman's voice to be heard. it is ridiculous and backward that in the 21st century, I must ask of you not to muffle the woman's voice. But I guess some things never change. As much as it irks and irritates me, I beg of you, please allow a woman to speak. Please allow her to air her grievances. Please allow her to share her pain. Please allow her to share her hurt, even when it embarrasses you. Even when you are the one who has inflicted it upon her. Even when it portrays you in a less than favorable light. I hear you. Where did this come from? Over the past couple of weeks, Facebook has been home to something called the Life in Leggings Challenge. Using this hashtag, young women from across the Caribbean region shared their stories of how the divinity, womanhood, conferred upon them had forced them into the most hurtful of experiences. Men had repeatedly violated their trust. Priests, pastors, doctors, cousins, uncles, and fathers. They were hurt. And if you ask me, there were too many women and girls who were hurt. But I digress. Here we had women and girls who had taken huge steps of courage to share their stories, to let other women know that they were not alone in their pains and struggles. And men took this opportunity to minimize their pain in the name of defending manhood. Not all men are like this. What about when women catcall us? What about when women do this? What about when women do that? Women do it too. Hey. But here what now? Why you so out of timing? Why must it be now? Why must your struggles and pains be articulated in a way that minimizes that women have experienced? What women have experienced? Why must the spotlight be taken off these women's stories to give precedence to yours? Brother, I do not wish to uphold double standards, so I say, by all means, if women have crossed boundaries that they shouldn't have in their dealings with you, protest it boldly. Brother, these women did not say that every man raped them. They did not say that every man is bad. These women did not say that all men are poison. They are sharing with the world how some of our brothers violated them. They are sharing with the world how you have sometimes not understood the negative weight that comes with your actions. And instead of seeking to silence their voices, instead of seeking to minimize their plights, all I ask is that you do better. And hey, if you want to do hashtag Life in Boxes challenge, if you want to do that hashtag Life in Boxes challenge, I'm here for it. Believe me when I say that I will not seek to silence your voice or minimize your plight. Your sister, Chadia. And I'll do one last one because it seems like I'm beating my brothers. So, yes, I'll do one last one because it seems like I'm beating my brothers. So I'll do something that's probably a little more encouraging. Hold on. Yeah. All right. Dear real man, I call you a real man not because you are faithful to your wife and love your children. I call you a real man not because you own the brand of loyalty that caused you to sacrifice your freedom and do some time in the joint instead of snitching on your homeboy who actually committed the crime. I call you a real man not because you can dagger real good. I call you a real man not because you have swimmers and have fathered several children. I call you a real man not because the ladies love the D. I call you a real man not because you open doors and pull out chairs. I call you a real man not because of anything you've done. There is nothing that you can do, cannot do, or will not do that will invalidate what you are. Man. I call you a real man because God says you are. When He formed you in your mother's womb, He said that you were to have a mixture of chromosomes that would result in the formation of a human being that is male. He decided that you were to have a cocktail of hormones that would result in your ability to produce the spermatozoa that is one half of the human embryo. You are a real man because God says you are. Sign, acknowledging, real man. Thank you.
Do you feel validated now? Real man? Was that sufficient? Was that encouraging? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Chadia Mathurin with letters to my sister and letters to my brother. Thank you very much for that
To my
reading.
brother,
To
yeah.
my brother. To my brother, to my sister. Thank you so much for that reading.
Thank you, thank you.
Questions from the audience? Yes, in the back.
Thank you, Chadia. Very refreshing.
Thank you.
So how do you balance, because I know you're into the business of publishing, but how do you balance the discipline of writing with the art of writing? So I've started to do some writing, but sometimes I'm not in the mood to write, but my brain is telling me you need to write because, scientifically it's 7 days in a week. You should write maybe half an hour a day, So how do you balance, and Mr. Dixon, if he comes back in time, could probably answer as well. How do you balance that discipline with writing, with that art of writing? When you get into that flow and you could sit for hours and things just pour out of you and your fingers just do magic on the keyboard, or if you're writing on a pad with a pen and a writing instrument. How do you do that?
So I wouldn't say that I'm the most disciplined writer. I'm a go with the flow person. Like I said, this is not something that I intended to do with my life. I do other things. There are particular schools of thought which say, oh, you need to write an hour a day. If I don't feel like it, I don't do it. I'm just going to be real. If I don't feel like it, I don't do the writing. But in regards to managing a publishing house, I've seen how this can, because I'm publishing my own stuff, then I have the liberty of doing that. But I own a publishing house, and as a traditional publishing house, we take on the responsibility of the marketing, of the printing, and hopefully soon being able to give writers advances, right? And meeting deadlines is important. So if you're a writer who's been taken on by a publishing house, then there has to be some measure of discipline because you probably have to meet certain deadlines. But as to how to achieve that deadline, I don't think I'm the best person to tell you how to do that because, like I said, I'm not a disciplined writer. But there are coaches, there are writing coaches, there are people who have set aside their time and they will coach you through the process. I had to do a lot of coaching when we did our first set of books. I had to tell people, well, you know what, if this letter is not in there, well, we have to go. It has to go to print. So you probably want to get a writing coach if you think that you need that. But if you're doing the self-publishing thing, it's really just about being motivated enough and enjoy the process. Like if you enjoy writing, then write when it comes to you. That's my take on it.
Yes. A quick question for you. What are your thoughts on incorporating AI in the writing process? You go online now and you see all of these adverts about, you can write a book about anything you want just by using AI. Now, we laugh at this, but this is the reality of the future of writing. So what are your thoughts on that?
So there are two lanes of writing that we can touch on here. There's writing that provides information. So I can probably write a book on, how to publish using Kindle. And then AI can perhaps assist me with doing that. But as it concerns stuff like fiction, like what Mr. Dixon is writing, or even some of the stuff that I've written, I don't think AI can ever duplicate what I do. It's just not happening. AI cannot. People have this belief that AI can become smarter than human beings. I think AI has access to a wider range of knowledge than human beings, but as it concerns the creative aspect of the human being, AI is incapable of duplicating that. So there will always be a space for the writer, and I don't think I've seen anything from AI that's supremely impressive that makes me say that I don't want to read the work of a particular author. Like I said, if you're writing a business book about how to set up your Google Analytics account, etc., AI is fantastic for that. And you can push out these books like a meal and sell them for $1 on Amazon and make money. People have built publishing empires from doing things like that. But as it concerns the creativity of the human being, I don't think AI can duplicate that at all.
Very good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Still morning.
Well,
Sorry.
morning, sorry.
It's been a long day so far. My question is, why Accra? And how has being in that particular space, that particular cultural and economic space, impacted your creativity and the ability to be an entrepreneur?
Okay, great question. Thank you. I think from a very young age, I've always had a very Pan-Africanist thrust. Like I said, I have a few of my past teachers here, so they would be very familiar with the type of poetry that I would have written back in the day when I was at SALCC, and the type of music that I would have written back in the day at SALCC. So, despite my very firm and staunch allegiance to my Christian faith, in pretty much every other aspect, I am very much Pan-Africanist in my thought process. So, to answer your question of why Accra, Ghana, I've always been intrigued by the continent, particularly as it concerns the similarities that we share in typology. And Accra would not have been my first choice, if I am to be honest. I thought I would have been in Kenya as the first African country, because like I said, when I wrote my first book, I have thousands, tens of thousands of Kenyan friends from just writing my first book. So I always thought that Kenya would be the first spot. I landed in Accra because even before moving to the continent, I used to write a blog called African Entrepreneur. And I would chronicle the life stories of African entrepreneurs who were doing fantastic things. These were young guys, Forbes 30 under 30, really solving the continent's problems. Young guys and young ladies as well. Let me put that in. But they were really just, they were really solving the continent's issues, and I was intrigued. So in 2019, my maternal grandmother, she passed. And I think one of the things that had always kept me at least near the region is the need to be able to take a flight anytime and get home within 4 to 5 hours. So when my grandmother was dying, I was in New York at the time, I was able to take a flight and come home and sit with her before she died. And after she died, I just felt like, wow, I've lost my sense of purpose, because at the time, my goal was like, yo, I'm gonna become a millionaire and I'm just gonna give this woman everything that she's ever dreamed of. And when she died without me having accomplished this, I had lost my center. So I called up one of the guys that I had done a story on, and I asked him if there was an opportunity. And I interviewed for a position as a communications officer. Again, storytelling. I've been in the business of storytelling, I guess, from every facet. And he offered me a position as his comms person, and they brought me into Ghana. So that is how I landed in Ghana. As to how it has affected my ability to tell stories, as Mr. Dixon said earlier, most of the characters that we write are people that we would have, or sometimes they are composites of the people that we would encounter. And I think that being in Accra, Ghana has perhaps given me a wider canvas, or just greater exposure to different personalities. There are very many similarities in terms of our culture and the way we do things, but there are also differences. For example, Ghanaian men are very different from St. Lucian men. So if I'm writing a male character, you would probably see some of the things that I've experienced in Ghana with my male counterparts probably seeping into how I paint that character. So I guess just being in a different place with a different culture, with different people, the different ways they do things, it seeps into my ability to tell stories. And also a reminder of simpler times. I'll just say this, when my grandmother died in 2019, I'm this very stoic character, and I don't think I grieved her. And 5 months after her death, I was already in Accra. I was traveling on a bus from Accra to Kumasi, which is a 5-hour bus ride. And whilst I was about 2 hours into the bus ride, I saw this woman with a head tied, just like my grandmother would tie it, and she was holding the hands of 2 children. And I literally cried for the remaining 3 hours on the bus because it just reminded me so deeply of experiences that I would have had. My grandmother picking my sister and I up from school and walking us home. So I think, in a sense, being in Ghana has reminded me of a simpler time in St. Lucia. It's helped my recollection of experiences. So, yeah, I hope I was able to answer your question.
Very interesting. Yes, we have a few questions in the audience, but I also want to profit the opportunity from my own question. And this one is interesting. I'm a mother of 2 children, and I love to read to my children. I read to them every single night religiously. We love Roald Dahl. We like David Walliams. I also try to introduce them, of course, to Caribbean literature. The Laja Bless, for example, is one of their favorite stories. An Honest Thief. But I find that to find local children's, I know Don French has delved into that genre, has been very difficult from St. Lucia specifically. So this question is not only for you, but for the other writers. Why is it that as St. Lucians, we don't have as many children's books published? Why have we not delved in that genre? Just an open question.
Yes. So, should I go ahead?
Of course.
Yeah. So I think in terms of children's book, it's an entirely different game because there's the illustration aspect. I mean, it depends on the age group that you're looking at. There's the illustration aspect that can be quite expensive. As we speak, we at Wakote, we are getting ready to release a children's line of books. My sister, who's here, my younger sister, would have written one. And just the illustration process, it takes so long. I've had to put out a lot of money. And not just hers, we're doing a lot of other stuff. So as it concerns children's books, I think many people they don't have an idea of how to go about it because then there's the illustration aspect of things. And to be quite honest, had I not gotten Ghanaian illustrators, I don't think I would have been able to venture into the space because they will cut your arm and your leg. You have to sell a kidney and half of your liver to be able to get it done at a very high level within this Caribbean context. So I think the expense and just people not knowing how to navigate the space can be 2 of the reasons as to why we have limited offerings in this space. Yeah.
I just give a quick opinion on that about why so little children's literature from St. Lucia and from the Caribbean generally. I mean, writers have very, very specific gifts. You know, you're a writer doesn't mean you can write anything. And I really think that writing for children at whatever level, I think it's such a specific talent. I actually think it's rare. I actually think really, really well-written children's books or young people's books that don't talk down to them, but that really capture the way they think and feel and move. I think it's very, very rare. So I think that's one reason. So that out of the way. Chadia. Okay, so I mean, it's clear that gender issues, gender perspectives, and so on, it's a deep source of exploration and so on for you. But you're referring all the time to God as He. Is that an issue? Do you see a possible contradiction? Is it something you ever thought about, have explored, etc.? Yeah, curious.
Yeah, I think, as I would have said earlier, that I'm staunchly Pan-Africanist, perhaps excluding my very staunch allegiance to my Christian faith. Do I see the contradictions? Clearly, they exist. But I have had my personal experiences with God. Logically, I probably would be agnostic, atheist. I'm quite a reasonable person most times. So if I was going along those lines, I probably would be like, okay, yeah, God is she. God is, but I have an allegiance to the God of the Abrahamic faiths, and he is characterized as male. And yes, I do see the contradictions. But even my exploration and expression of gender, I believe I express it in terms of what the God that I serve sees me and my male counterpart as. So I do see the contradictions. and it's made it very difficult for me to probably be in certain spaces, advocating the way that I do. So yeah, valid question. But yeah, I'm Christian, staunchly Christian. I don't think I'm veering off the path. Yeah.
Chadia, it's such a pleasure. Honestly, such a pleasure. I remember you as very bold in your, as a singer, writing. You always wrote your songs and performing in the class and that kind of thing, and the type of, and how you explored, the way you explored music, not traditional, but you seem to have been very adventurous in the way you explored music and the type of rhythms, the type of songs that you wrote and sang, you know? I found, I just wanted to know, in terms of you as the writer and you as the singer and musician, I wanted to know how music influences the rhythm of your writing, you know? Because I find it very interesting listening to your writing, you know, and I wanted you to talk about that, the rhythm of your writing.
Okay.
And somebody already mentioned language. I think when I came in, somebody was speaking about language. But even the language aspect, considering your experience as a St. Lucian, as somebody who lived in Trinidad for quite a while, and somebody who's now living in Ghana. So I know language, the way language is regarded or used, and how it's reflected. You know, I know the culture reflects the language, and the language impacts the culture, and the culture impacts the language, and all of that. So I just wanted to know. Yeah.
Very interesting question. I guess I would want to ask you, based on what you know of my music and what you've heard from my writing, how do you see any similarities in the rhythm?
Well, pass the call, yes. Yeah, when I heard you perform your songs in class in like about
2007, almost 2 decades ago.
Yeah, 2007. So I see that there's amazing growth and explore. You know what I mean? Yes. So when you performed in the class, I think you were in that space. The Pan-African political, sometimes in the songs that you wrote, the type of themes, you know, very, very political. But in your writing now, I see, you know. Yeah.
So just to start off, I think all great writing has writers. If your rhythm is off, then I'm probably not going to be reading your stuff. I've picked up books from people who are deemed very great authors, and the rhythm was off, and so it didn't appeal to me. So I would say very much music has influenced how I write. I write with a particular rhythm, with a particular voice. So yeah, music has definitely influenced and I'm still very political in my writing. You just heard a different, a different part today. I'm multifaceted, and I try to explore all of who I am in my writing. Writing, in a sense, is very much therapeutic for me. So, like I said, I'm trying my hand at fiction, and maybe I'll release fiction, but I'm more like, let's explore who we are as people, using writing to heal, using writing to challenge, using writing to chastise, using writing to encourage. I'm very much, I very much submit to the philosophy that the pen is the sword. So yeah, this is what I use writing for. Yeah.
We cannot deny that the Republic of Labrie has produced such renowned St. Lucians, you know, for sure. I'm not quite sure why that is. We'll have to discuss that. The lab, yes, we'll have to discuss that in another forum. And we'll take one more question from Dr. There's another one here as well. We'll take two more, because this is a real opportunity here for people to engage the authors and authors talk. So we would like to invite Dr. Fulgence. A mic will be given. Okay, pass the mic.
Thank you. Chadia Akwaba. I'm really happy to be in the same space, the same room with you. And there's a question, I've been following your stuff online. We speak.
Oh, yes.
And it's a question I've been meaning to ask you. I think Kendall started asking. I'll finish
Sure.
by adding mine on top of it. I know about the Christianity. I know about the Pan-Africanism. I know about the gender. The African diasporic experience and gender is very different from the African. And having been in that same space that you're in right now, and your take on African men, well, Ghanaian men, I find very different from that spoken of Ghanaian women speaking about Ghanaian men. Because the first time I heard you speak about them, I was a little shocked. So I was wondering how you navigate a diasporic and African space, gender, coming up with your perspective on male Ghanaian man vis-a-vis the Caribbean man.
Okay, very interesting question. About a year ago, I sat with one of my St. Lucian brethren who was very much pushing the Pan-Africanism agenda. So I don't know if he's tuned in, Dr. Chevy Eugene. He's now Dr. Chevy Eugene, yes. And we were talking about this seeming attraction to African men by Caribbean women and African men to Caribbean women. And we theorized that each of our cultures present to each of the different groups something that they're not used to. So Ghanaian women or West African women, and I'm not saying all Ghanaian men are perfect creatures, please don't get me wrong. I probably will not be married to a Ghanaian man because I am very much a Caribbean woman who loves to express herself. So don't get me wrong, but there are certain things about manhood in Ghana that, as a St. Lucian woman, I appreciate. For example, I appreciate a Ghanaian man's duty to family. They take that duty very seriously. When I meet a 24, 23-year-old Ghanaian man, as compared to a St. Lucian 23, 24-year-old man who's quite coddled, it's an entirely different experience. In terms of how I navigate the space very easily because I'm pretty much coddled in the Ghanaian space. I don't touch doors, like doors are open. Now it's almost automatic that when I get near a door, if there's a man around, I don't touch it because he's likely going to open the door. So these are things, I've had to take a step back, honestly, as a woman, because, we are more aggressive in the Caribbean space. From the very beginning when I arrived in Ghana, I realized, you have to chill out because even the way the men speak, they are so soft-spoken. I was just like, hey, kisa kalila. Yeah. They're very soft-spoken, so I had to take a step back as a Caribbean woman. It hasn't been a very difficult thing to do because, who doesn't want their door open all the time? Who doesn't want to be catered to? Who doesn't want to experience chivalry? So it hasn't been a very difficult thing. And I was saying that Ghanaian women, this is something, they always say a prophet is without honor in his own hometown. And this is probably the case here, where we don't appreciate what we have. So for example, now within the space where young men in St. Lucia are talking about women, they say, oh, women are masculine. This is the new thing. Now, women are masculine, and so they want a softer version of womanhood. But in getting a softer version of womanhood, there are certain things that come with this. Are you ready to not split bills 50-50? Are you ready to take on the role of provider? Are you ready to take on this woman's entire family? These are some of the things that West African men endure. They pay the cost to be the boss. These are some of the things that West African men endure that give them the scope to demand certain things from women. And these are the things that women are willing to release certain things because the men do what they have to do in that regard. And please, I'm not saying that's what I want. I'm just saying that this is what it is. Then you have the new African man who is now coming up and saying, boy, we're not getting any help, all of this responsibility. They're moving away from that whole duty thing. And I'm very much attracted to the idea of the independent Caribbean woman who's handling her business. So there are these two spectrums, and this is just really what it is. A prophet is without honor in his own hometown. So we may not be appreciated here, but we may be appreciated elsewhere. And you may not be appreciated here, but you may be appreciated elsewhere. So. You are all invited. Yeah. So I hope, Doc, I was able to answer your question. And it was actually a mild question. I thought he was going to give me some real pressure because, when he was my lecturer, these were the same types of debates we would be having in class. So I hope I was able to answer your question. Thank you.
So Miss George's question about children's books, right after Mr. Mac Donald went, I was thinking, and I actually thought about children's books, and we don't have children's books, we don't have children's novels and stuff. And I think a part of that is because we have a lot of vocal storytellers. So a lot of our experiences as West Indian children with our local stories, our local folklore and stuff comes from probably our parents or our grandparents telling us a story. Not something written down, but something they have memorized, and that's usually how it's passed on. So a lot of the time, we do get the experiences of, oral traditions. We do get the experiences of having or listening to our own stories, but they're never written down. And I think because we carry on like that, nobody really sees a purpose in publishing or having it in a book, a physical book, because, when you're a child, you heard a story, you grow up, you tell your child the same story. It never really crosses your mind. So that's probably one of the reasons we don't really have physical copies of children's books. But I don't think it's an excuse as to why we don't have them. Also, when you were reading the letters about women and, gender problems, especially in the Caribbean, and even the letters to my brother also address a lot of women's issues. The men kind of got offended, but I wanted to say that this is still ongoing. Every time a woman opens her mouth, and you literally said, let women express their grievances. Every time a woman expresses a grievance, you get this backlash, or it's like you get a lot of excuses, and you still end up having to coddle them for the very same thing you just asked them to let you talk about. What I wanted to say is, to be woman is not to be good. To be woman is to be a person. When women speak about their problems, we're not asking men or anybody who doesn't subscribe to feminism, or not necessarily feminism, just looking at women as a whole. It's not us saying that we are perfect and we don't deserve the things that are happening to us. It's us saying that we are human and we don't deserve the things that are happening to us. Just because men also have these same experiences is not an excuse for both genders to continue doing these things to each other. And I don't like that so early in the women's liberation movement, somehow a good moral compass got associated with feminism, because women are not asking or preaching, saying that we are perfect. We're just saying that we want to be seen as a whole person. And I think you really get that in through the letters, that to be a woman is to be a person, and to be a person is to come with positives and negatives. And we're just asking people to accept that we have positives and negatives.
Interesting.
Thank you so much, Faith. And I'm happy that I mean, there are other questions in the audience, but I think that I've got to respect the time, and we're supposed to finish. And I'm happy that Faith ended with this commentary, because the first question that Mr. Dixon asked you, do you remember the first question? Do you read? Do you read a lot? And it's obvious that you do. And we're in a space where we know that our Nobel laureate also read a lot. And so I just wanted to end on one final note before I do the vote of thanks. And I want to go back to the children. If we want our children to read, then we have to write literature for them to read. And we're looking at Derek Walcott, for example. I was reading, one of the books that we started reading was a biography of Bob Marley, a children's version of that. If we can get a writer, children's version of Derek Walcott, children's version of Sir Arthur Lewis, get the kids reading from early, hearing their voice, their St. Lucian voice, understanding the picking up of the hot accra, peeling the green figs, their own experiences written by their own people. Maybe, maybe not. You're disagreeing with me, Jane? Hands are going up more and more. Don't know what to do. It's so hard to be a moderator. Want to keep the audience engaged. Can I get just 2 more comments? And then that's it. And then that's it. All right.
No problem.
We'll go to you. We'll go to Jane first, and then we'll pass over to you.
I just wanted to say, I think Chadia said it already. It's the problem of publishing. We have a lot of children's books at home that people will give us books because we are who we are and blah, blah, blah. And we have a lot going back a long way. But how would you buy them? Where would you go to pick them up? And I think that, there are no bookshops. There just aren't. We need places to go and buy the books if that's going to happen, and that is a huge problem, and I don't know how we're going to solve that one.
End on a bang, please.
Do not underestimate St. Lucian's allergies to books. Okay? The reason we had a bookshop the other day that closed just before COVID is because we lament we don't have a bookshop, and when one opened, we don't patronize it. The reason I do the peanut pledge is because I'm trying to find a way to get the books to the kids, and every year with the support, we give the books out to the kids because people don't buy books. Mind you, they like it for free. We love our freeness. Oh my God, we love our freeness. So that is the vicious cycle that we are in, that there is material out there, but they don't call it struggling writer for nothing.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. As we come to a close this now afternoon, I would like to take this opportunity to, of course, thank the staff, faculty, students of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, our specially invited guests, our online viewers, and of course, we would like to thank our authors this morning, and in the person of Chadia Mathurin and Mr. Mac Donald Dixon. Round of applause for them again. It was definitely a riveting conversation. Special thank you goes out to the Derek Walcott Library, of course, for providing us with this esteemed venue, and where we have gathered to celebrate literature, creativity, and the enduring power of storytelling. I extend my gratitude once again to everyone who's here this morning. And lastly, I would like to thank the organizing committee, volunteers, and everyone involved in making this event a resounding success. As per usual, your dedication and hard work and attention to detail has made it a resounding success. Yes. So I think there's a token of appreciation that has to be presented. So I would like to invite Kathy, Miss McDiarmid, will you be presenting that token of appreciation? One of the things that we do well here at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College is to show appreciation for all those who always come out and share with us their talents, their gifts, and particularly their time. Thank you so much for that. So Mr. Dixon will be receiving a token of appreciation. Thank you so much. And of course, Ms. Mathurin. Library Week. Library Week is ending on a bang. I think that our head librarian, Mrs. Kathy Birch McDiarmid, does always a fantastic, wonderful job. Not only is her push and advocacy for making sure that we get a library on campus, we need one desperately, but the fact that she's using social media to make sure that all of these events, people are aware of it. All of the events are always live streamed. She has done an immaculate job this week, every week, for the few years that she's been head librarian at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. So once again, we would like to applaud your efforts. And we continue to support literacy. We continue to support libraries. So have a wonderful and productive day, and long live the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College.